Donald Trump announces he will nominate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to head the Department of Health and Human Services. Speaker Mike Johnson orders 18 federal departments to preserve and retain documents related to their actions under the Biden administration. And green energy globalists grapple with having to deal with the incoming Trump administration. We have those stories and so much more. Blaze News Tonight starts right now. Welcome to the chaos. I'm Jill Savage. Today is Thursday, November 14th. Now, yesterday, Donald Trump unveiled 3 more administration picks: Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, and Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. And as we just said, Trump also picked RFK Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. So here to break it all down is Matthew Peterson. He's the editor-in-chief of Blaze News, and Kevin Roberts. He's an author and president of Heritage Foundation and Heritage Action. So Kevin, there's so much going on every single day this week, but what are the latest thoughts from you on these picks?
Well, we are well on our way, maybe even ahead of schedule, Jill, in restoring the American dream. We all had high expectations for this incoming Trump-Vance administration, but President Trump isn't messing around. He understands that there's limited time, not just one more term for him. But if you think about facing midterm elections in 2026, he realizes that the first 100 days, the first year of that second term that the American people gave him last week, all are essential for restoring the American dream. These cabinet appointments are essential to doing that. And what's really important to look for, as I know you and Matt will do, will be the plans that come in with these cabinet appointees, as well as their key deputies. These are things that the conservative movement, as we have discussed, have been working on. We're also very confident that the men and women who are going to serve in the administration, in addition to the cabinet secretaries, understand what time it is. It's time to take our country back.
Kevin, I want to get into the plans in a minute, but first, I want you to respond to one of the objections that you'll hear from the right. I mean, we know people are freaking out on CNN and MSNBC. It's not even like their minds are blown at this point. It's just sort of shock and awe, It's like overwhelmed, really. They don't know what to say. But on the right, you'll hear people say, look, Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, these people they're just not qualified. And the best objection of these objections, which I don't agree with, is something like, and that means that they'll get eaten alive when they get in there. They won't be able to adequately do anything because they'll get the runaround. What do you think about that?
Yeah, they said the same thing. The British-dominated press said the same thing of American patriots in the Revolution. They said the same thing about General Eisenhower in the early 1940s. I can go on and on listing these American heroes. And ultimately, that's swamp talk, Matt. These are people, not just including on the right, but especially on the political right, who understand that by virtue of appointing these disruptors, whether it's my really good friend Pete Hegseth, who's going to be an awesome defense secretary, whether it's Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, whether it's RFK as HHS secretary, that the gig is up. That the K Street-dominated, ridiculous policy that inverts the way America should work is coming to an end. It inverts it in this way. It prioritizes the interest of Washington and New York elites ahead of ordinary Americans. And if Trump and Vance's victory means anything, it means that we're restoring what this country is supposed to be about, which is that this is a place where ordinary Americans, regardless of where you're from, where your people came from, run this country. And K Street and the swamp hate that.
Indeed, they do. And that's why it's a beautiful time to be alive. So talk about the plans. When these people go in, these are people who are willing and I would say able to carry out the sorts of things that people on the right have been talking about for decades. I feel that in my bones. But say more about this, because you're already releasing this Dawn's Early Light. You have a book of plans, I take it, for how to address some of this stuff. And so, how do you look at this? You look at the situation now. Is this a matter of, picking and choosing different plans among different sides? Is this a matter of, how are they going to get this done?
Well, you're kind to mention my book, which I will be happy to talk about momentarily. But let me say something that, at least in the short term, is more important than that. And it is that Donald Trump is showing his experience as a president, obviously, having served one term, and he's showing his experience as a CEO. Matt, you and I, over the last several years, have talked about leadership, about CEOs in the for-profit and nonprofit worlds. And what you're seeing is Donald Trump at his best in terms of the gifts that God gave him. And that is, he's choosing not just men and women who are ready to implement policies, but they've got the virtue of courage and they have the virtue of fortitude. And in other words, he's going to delegate the details of these plans while continuing to articulate what the vision is for them. My book is related to this in the sense that one of the jobs that Heritage has, and we're humble about this, no hubris in this, is to articulate what we think the long-term vision for all of this is to be. In other words, the best plans, whether they're in defense or HHS or in the Department of Justice or in education, need to be plans that certainly are detailed as it relates to the first 100 days, the first year. But if those detailed tactical plans are not connected to the ultimate objective, which isn't merely to diminish the power of the administrative state, but to do that in the name of restoring self-governance, then these are short-term plans that the swamp will, in fact, succeed in eating alive. In other words, what every one of these cabinet secretaries needs to do is not just hire good men and women who can implement those plans and have the competence and expertise to do so, but they must remember that a vital part of their daily jobs, certainly for the first year, is continuing to communicate to the American people the why. And it's articulating the why Donald Trump believes this country was teetering on the brink of devolving into a terrible last chapter in American history that won him the election. By the way, I'm confident that they will do that. And what we're trying to do by publishing this book now is offer a friendly reminder that we might be entering a golden era of conservative policy reform if, in fact, we've got the plans and the people to do so.
Yeah, knowing your why is in all of the leadership books out there. And I hope that we see that come through in the federal government. But if people want to play along at home and make sure that these things are actually going to be done, what are some of the signposts, Kevin, that they should be looking for to get this implemented?
Well, the first one in the short term, in terms of signpost, Jill, and I love that metaphor, will be what we're already seeing from the transition and from President Trump, appointing good men and women. The second will be, and this will come in the next weeks and months, what are the plans? What in fact will be RFK's plans early on for HHS? But the second phase, and in a lot of ways, it's more important than Washington. Is that we revitalize federalism. If, in fact, we want to devolve power from Washington back to the states, we have to make Washington a lot less important in our lives. And one of the ways we do that is to make sure that states have appropriate power and authority in a complementary way with Washington. But it's the third part that I think is the most important and that I emphasize in my book. And it goes right in line, Jill, with your question about how people can play along at home. Washington's important, but not the most important. State capital is important, but not the most important. The single most important thing individuals can do at home is to pay attention to their families, to the relationships they have, and to be present in meetings of their county commission, of their county executive, of their school boards. In other words, federal politics, national politics, as important as they've been to us this year, are the least important when compared to what we do in our daily lives. It is time for us to regenerate the institutions, our schools, our colleges, our civic associations that actually make Washington be a lot less important.
Well, Kevin, it's Dawn's Early Light. Where can people go pick that up?
A local bookstore, but also Amazon. We would be grateful if you do that. Everything benefits not just the Heritage Foundation, but the conservative movement in this cause. And of course, we're grateful for everything you do at the Blaze.